Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to this week's Chasing Giants podcast with Don Higgins. I'm Terry Peer, brought to you by Osseo Gear. And Don, it's Christmas week. So first of all, Merry Christmas to you and Merry Christmas to all of our listeners.
Merry Christmas. I got a Christmas present early this week. I think last week I told I had some health tests at the hospital this week, and got news earlier today that they did a scan of my brain and they found out I do have a brain, and it's normal. They did not see anything wrong. So one of the big concern was with the mini strokes. They say I had earlier that there was some blockage or something that might cause a big one later, and they do not see anything like that. I can say that since they put me on the blood pressure medicine and the blood thinner, that I felt a whole lot better. Haven't had a headache or anything like that in pushing 2 weeks now. So, and it was daily. So apparently the problem has been more blood pressure than anything, and got that under control. So, good news. I got an early Christmas present.
Well, that's great news. So are you done with all the tests, or do you still have to do some more?
That's a good question. I do have some more appointments. They thought maybe some of my headache issues were my eyes. So I've got an appointment to have LASIK surgery on my eyes.
You're doing it?
Yeah, I'm doing it. Okay. I'm not going to wear glasses. I've been without glasses 61 years, and I just think to put them things on. And the big reason is shooting my bow for bow hunting.
Yeah,
is the reason I don't want them. So, I'm going to have that LASIK surgery, get my eyes corrected, and hopefully, with all that, I'm done with my health issues.
I'm not a candidate for it yet. I asked about it when I got my new prescription earlier this year. I think it was in August or September, and they're worried about me doing it at my age. It's going to revert too soon, so they want me to hold off for a couple more years. But as soon as I'm a candidate for it, I'm getting rid of these things. They're a pain in the butt. Always dirty, always in the way.
Yep.
Signs of getting old, right?
Well, I'm starting to feel all kinds of issues from getting old, and I guess it's at 61 years old, it's time to start feeling them. But I look around and see other people my age and younger that are in far worse shape than I am. So I feel blessed to still be able to do all I do, and certainly, again, appreciate everyone's prayers. Still get texts and messages daily from people asking how I'm doing, and that's the reason I wanted to mention it on here, just so everybody know that good news. And I'm back on the road consulting on properties. I did 4 this week. I actually did one this morning. So I got to take it easy. I'm not supposed to get my heart rate up too much, but so if I got to climb hills or anything, I got to take it slow. But hey, at least I'm out there.
You got a heated side by side with a cab that you can use if it gets too froggy, right?
I do have that, and I will take advantage of it at every opportunity.
Well, it's this is Christmas week, so by the time everyone sees this, last week and this week I've been on the road. My wife and I were celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary, so we've been in South Florida, working remote from down here. So our jobs allow us to not have to be in a specific spot when we're working. So I tell you what, this after sitting in a deer stand like I did, even though it wasn't extremely cold, 80-degree weather in the middle of December, and having the back of the house open, it's been nice. So been real relaxing, and a lot of nice time with my wife. So we've had a good time. Kids flew down over the weekend, so by the time people watch this, we'll actually be back home. And then celebrating Christmas this week. What are you guys doing for the holiday?
We're actually going to celebrate early on Saturday before Christmas, and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, we don't have anything going on. I'll actually probably go hunting that day. I don't want to ask a client to meet on their farm and consult on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, so I'm probably going to go sit in a deer blind.
What has the weather been like in Illinois over this past week? The cold weather started to set in a couple of the areas that our listeners are from. What's it doing there?
Yeah, it's we had rain one day, but been would you name it? We've had it. We've had sunny days that were fairly warm. Today it was windy and cold and cloudy. This week coming up, Christmas week, we've got rain in the forecast for 4 or 5 different days. I don't think anything major, but up to about a half inch a day for I think 4 days in a row. So that winter, weather is setting in, and it could turn cold at the drop of a hat at this point. So
right,
I'll just enjoy every day that I can that it's not bitter cold.
Yep. Well, before this podcast gets off too far, we're going to play a special promo video that we just finished for the Shipshewana show, and then come back talk about it a little bit. We don't use this podcast to be a Real World commercial very often, but then after the Osseo spot later, we're going to talk about 2 new products that Real World's coming out with that we want to make sure everyone knows about, make some announcements about Miscanthus, and then I think we're going to try to get through 6 listener-submitted questions on this Christmas week episode of the podcast. So this is a new promo video for the Shipshewana show. We hope you enjoy it. We'll be right back.
Coming this February to the Michiana Event Center in Shipshewana, Indiana, the FAE Midwest Sportsman Classic. Thursday, February 13th through Saturday, February 15th. Come see the Whitetail Legends Classic with Bobby Worthington, Don Higgins, Al Foster, Joe Miles, Gene Winsell, Barry Winsell, and moderator Terry Peer.
We started shooting arrows. Here we are pushing 80 years old, and we haven't put our toys away yet. I say, like, these lights really brighten my eyes, and I know what the buck felt like that Don Higgins got last year right before he pulled the trigger.
When I got to hunting the whitetail deer later on, I realized I was hunting the #1 prey animal in the world, the most difficult animal in the world to kill. Before that week was over, my heart was broken because I found out they had a naked man in their room. True story.
Whitetail bucks aren't supposed to be easy. A mature whitetail buck, he's the top of the line. I mean, he's the top challenge in the archery world, and it's supposed to be a close range sport.
I think that there's too many deer hunters out there that are trying to improve their success through their equipment instead of their woodsmanship skills.
Don't miss the Chasing Giants live podcast on Thursday night. Brian Dickinson, the author of Blind Descent, on stage Friday and Saturday. Mark Zona, the Hall of Fame angler, will be live on Thursday and Friday to show you how legends catch big fish. Also in this year's Unmatched speaker lineup, Terry Hodges, the legendary game warden and author of the thrilling Warden Force series. Team Radical on big game hunting and predator calling. Andy Andreas on fruit trees for wildlife. Smokey from Smokey's Deer Lures. And James Watson, Ross Robertson, and Mike Raber rounding out our next level fishing lineup. Thousands of dollars in attendee giveaways, guns, a double drop hunting blind, a fishing trip, Osseo camo, kayak, and more. Find a full show schedule at MidwestSportsmanClassic.com. Tickets available at the door. February 13th, 14th, and 15th. For more information, go to MidwestSportsmanClassic.com.
Don, the details are starting to be put together we just watched this video of all the people that are going to be there. And this show this year is not going to be necessarily one that you come in, walk the show for 4 hours and turn around and leave. There's going to be events with the legends every single day. And on top of it, fishing seminars. Andy Andreas, I hope that I can sneak away from our booth a little bit just to go support Andy, because his information, you can't get it anywhere else when it comes to fruit trees. He does a really good job.
Well, his apple breeding program is literally probably the best in the world. And I say that because Cornell University has one of the top apple breeding programs, and he's ahead of them. They actually reach out to him. When I was in Ohio and met Andy a couple summers ago, I also met a lady from Ohio State University, and this lady was over in one of them stand countries doing some research. I think it was Kazakhstan or one of them, on apples and apple trees, disease resistance. And she was over there on a 2-year study, and she heard about what Andy was doing, and she actually flew back to the States and aborted her project over there to work with him on some stuff. And he has a brand new presentation that I don't think has been shown anywhere yet, but he drove over to show me this summer, and I'm telling you, it's cutting edge stuff. There's no other apple trees out there like what Andy's selling through Gingrich Tree Farm. And those guys, they're going to be at the Shipshawana show as well. So it'd be worth coming out for multiple days and listening to some of these speakers, because there's going to be a bunch of good ones.
Yeah, so instead of one of the pieces of feedback that everyone got last year is we tried to shoehorn all of this carnal or tribal knowledge from guys like Bobby Worthington and the Wensels, Al Foster, you and Joe Miles in an hour and a half event. And well, I mean, I think we just touched the tip of the iceberg on it. So each day there's going to be a breakout with those folks that people are going to be able to sit down, and obviously everyone will have booths where they can mingle, get pictures, autographs of guys like Bobby or the Wensels, and I think it's just going to be phenomenal. It's going to be a great 3 days, and we hope that you reach out to the website. They're starting to put all of the schedules on there so people can kind of make their travel plans, and hope you reach out for that. But I'm out of any trade show that we participate in, I'm looking forward to that one in Iowa this year.
Well, it's definitely a good one. Derek's just done a fantastic job. He had the Legends debate with myself and Tony LaPrade a couple years ago, but he comes up with some really good ideas. Makes it a lot different than the other shows, but the trade show itself, it's just different. It's got a different feel to it than most of these shows, and hats off to Derek for what he's done.
Yep. So reach out to the website on that video if you have any questions. Again, the schedules, people are sending us messages wanting to know what schedules are. They'll be published as soon as they get finalized. So we do not have any firsthand or preview knowledge outside of anyone else at this point. You guys know what we know, but keep watching that website, and then we'll make announcements as Derek Drip feeds it to us. But let's take a quick break from ASIA. We'll be right back with some new announcements and products from Real World.
ASIA Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. ASIA Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit ASIOgear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. ASIO Gear. Prepare to be invisible.
He's actually going to be doing some short videos on some consulting visits of his, where he's showing more of the vision of what's done. We're going to post those on Real World social media accounts, but it just, I can't put into words how good people are to us, whether it's just the dialogue we have leading up to the consulting visit, and even while we're there and afterwards. These people are such good folks and become very close, dear friends of ours.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Terry. A lot of these guys start out as clients, but they end up as friends. And I've even got a couple of business partners that started out as consulting clients. And it's just, that's the reason I have a hard time retiring and stepping away from this. I know the big joke amongst myself and Al Foster and Joey Johnson is, I always tell them I'm going to slow down next year. Well, it's always next year. And next year has never come yet. And the reason it's so hard for me to slow down is because I love what I do, and the people that I get to meet, it's just fantastic. I remember it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago on the podcast, I mentioned how much I like cherry pie. And that winter, I think I had so much cherry pie, and some of it I ate at people's homes along with ice cream. Sometimes they would send a cherry pie home with me. They listen to the podcast, they pay attention, and things happen that you're not even expecting, and just things like that, you know. And I do want to make note of something that happened to me this week. So I got a call from a supporter and a reader of the Whitetail Life magazine, and but they had heard a rumor, something about it was about me, and you know, I heard about a couple of big bucks. I don't know if it was on a consulting client's property or what, and that I showed up in the area and knocked on all the doors and tied up all the land and started hunting there. You know, I've had so many opportunities to hunt on consulting clients' properties, and I never do it. Man, I encourage all the guys that are working with me not to do that either. These folks are paying us to come in and make their property the best that it can be. I don't feel right, you know, even at their invitation coming onto their property. And I've darn sure never went around the neighborhood to any of my clients, tried to get permission. And, you know, the amount of integrity that we showed to, or that we try to have in our dealings is, you know, above reproach. And I just want everybody to know that's listening to this that you don't have, if you hire one of us, you don't have anything to worry about us showing up in your neighborhood, because these guys are showing us their trail camera pictures and shed antlers off of giant bucks and such. And, you know, they've got to feel comfortable with us. And if you hear a rumor like that, just ask the person for some details. You know, where did this happen at? Who did it happen to? And I'm telling you, it never happened. And and the gentleman that called me was actually, he wanted to get his facts straight because he was going to set some people straight. And I appreciate that he did that. And that's the kind of people that we're dealing with on a daily basis, people that have our backs, and we got to have their backs too. So, I appreciate all my clients, whether they hire me or West Elks or you or any of our guys. You know, we've got an obligation to those folks that we're going to uphold, and they have been so good to us that we're never going to do anything to jeopardize the trust they put in us.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the first thing that I do is find out where the property is, and then I go into my Onyx and make sure that there isn't an existing customer around a neighbor of that. And then if there is, I make a phone call and say, you know, somebody a couple miles away has just asked me to do it. You on board or stay away? So we try to be as respectful as we can. Last week, before we do this, I was thinking the other day about how much, I don't want to say hate comments, but just weird comments came from your "there is no second rut" comments last week. But I don't want people to kind of distract them, even though that's what we titled the podcast from last week. I think the biggest takeaway from last week's podcast was the gut health and the diarrhea. Not a lot of people, they kind of glanced over that in the comments last week, and I made a follow-up post on Real World site today about that. And I think that's the one thing that we really need to be focused on as land managers, especially in areas that allow us to do it, is focusing on that health of the herd from now and through February. You know, people got a little bit distracted. They don't necessarily maybe agree with what you said on the second rut, but I think that was probably the biggest takeaway right now from a herd health standpoint. It's probably the most pivotal of the year, right?
Yeah, and I also talked to a gentleman this morning from Iowa that was talking about the dead deer that they're still finding, fresh dead deer that are just now dying, and seeing deer in very poor body condition and such. And a lot of that is carryover from the EHD. Now, the EHD did not kill the deer, but it compromised that animal's health to the point that they later die. A lot of times they'll die over the winter of pneumonia or something. And so EHD has some lingering effects, even on the deer that survive it. They can die later of other causes. And he was saying that he's been feeding deer on one of his farms, I think, for 4 years, and that he definitely sees a difference. I think he owns 4 farms, and he definitely sees a difference on that farm. He's never found a dead deer on that farm where he's been supplemental feeding using our Expect Healthy Deer technology. So I'm not going to say it's going to save every deer, because it certainly is not. There's challenges getting that product into the deer on a consistent basis with wild deer. And then you got states like where I live in Illinois where you just can't feed it at all to begin with. So you're right. We're at the point of the year where we need to be focused on herd health. If we can get them from now till spring in the best body condition possible, we're going to be, those animals are going to be, really set up for growing a better rack this coming summer. And when we start talking about real world products, I want to share one that I think gets overlooked at this time of the year. That's our NutriCrave corn. And the reason for it is that corn is much higher in calories than regular ag corn. In fact, it's more than double. It's like 2.2 times the amount of calories. So if a deer comes out in a field or a plot and he eats, say, a quarter pound of NutriCrave corn instead of a quarter pound of regular ag corn, he's going to get more than twice the number of calories in the same amount of corn. And that's huge. In fact, I'm trying to figure out a way on my farm to grow more NutriCrave corn. I would like to have it last me, because I've never yet had my NutriCrave make it through the entire winter. The plots just get wiped out too quick. I need to expand that to have enough NutriCrave to get through the spring. And got some ideas on where I can do that, but I'd really need to implement that, because those extra calories go a long way towards getting those deer through the winter in much better shape.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit of specifics about real world. We first want to say that Miscanthus sales are open. We had to do some testing on the website. So basically what happens in the background of the real world website is we harvest rhizomes where it's propagated at, and then it comes in and we separate it, break it down into smaller bags. And there's pre-arranged ship dates that you choose from when you go to buy it. And we have to program in all of those ship dates and then the different configurations of sizes of bags, boxes, all that. So all that had to be tested. So keep in mind, those dates are out in the future. I think the first date is maybe somewhere around the end of February, then goes through, I think, May, where we ship every other. And what we try to do is we arrange for UPS to pick up at the beginning of the week for these shipments, because as it gets later in the year, we can't control what warehouse these rhizomes sit in overnight, when they're shipping UPS ground, and we don't want them setting over a weekend. So a lot of times, Don, you've been there at the shop, we fill up our UPS truck when they come for deliveries, and some of them have to wait till Tuesday, but that's a pivotal thing that we try to do to make sure that those rhizomes don't sit in a hot warehouse over a weekend.
Yeah, in fact, the last couple of years, our shipments have been so large on some Mondays that UPS has actually brought a semi to our location and left the semi there so that we could fill it up with boxes of Miscanthus to be shipped. But so we ship it out. It's fresh. So the shipments that are going out, like the 1st of May, that stuff is not even in our possession. It's still in the ground when we start with our first shipment in February, and we're continually bringing in fresh rhizomes that have just been dug and shipping them out. We keep them in refrigerated storage at our place until they're shipped out. We always ship out on Monday and occasionally a Tuesday, so that it gets delivered to the customer's home before the weekend. And we do everything we can to keep it fresh and in good shape. And I think the extra effort that we put into it's paying off for our customers.
Yep. So go to our website now to say this. a large portion of our dealers actually sell miscanthus. So the other thing that you can do is you can get on our website, find your local dealer, contact them and ask them, are you carrying miscanthus this year? And they can give you the dates that they are doing it. So we can't control what the dealers do for inventory, but we obviously, to save shipping costs, encourage you to explore that with your local dealer. I know some of them have already started advertising pre-sale of miscanthus, which is great. Reach out to your local dealer, let them know. If you don't have a local dealer or want to buy online from us, that's great. But we've learned the lesson many, many years ago that our success hinges on other small businesses like ours, and we want to encourage people to do business with our dealers as best we can. Now, let's first talk about the sorghum product going into away from a pilot program into a full line product this year. You were kind of the spearhead of wanting to do this back years ago when we started the testing. I know it was tested on my farm for several years before the pilot program. What's the end goal that you wanted to do with offering a sorghum blend?
Well, a sorghum is a grain product, so it fits right in with soybeans and corn. However, the soybeans and the NutriCrave corn can be subject to some heavy browse pressure if you got significant deer herd. The deer do not browse grain sorghum like they would corn or soybeans, so it allows that plant to mature and produce that grain that you're going to need to get your deer through the winter. Our sorghum blend actually has 3 different grain sorghums in it. There's a red one, a white one, and then another one we call a wildlife sorghum. I just got a text within the last week from a consulting client and real world customer here in central Illinois about how awesome the deer were hitting that sorghum. And it was during the cold spell, probably the coldest period that we've had this winter so far. And he was going on about how the deer were just hammering that grain sorghum. And the big benefit is the fact that the deer don't browse it. Another couple things to keep in mind is it can be planted later. It doesn't have the moisture requirements of corn and soybeans, which is one reason it's popular out in the plain states like Kansas. It just, they're a little bit drier and more arid out that way. And grain sorghum does a whole lot better in those conditions than corn or soybeans will. It can also be planted later. I mean, you could plant grain sorghum well into June, probably the 1st of July in most regions, and have a good crop by fall. So, it's a good crop that you could go in and if you planted, one of the fall blends last year, say Harvest Salad or Deadly Dozen, go ahead and let that stuff green up and then, spray it. You can leave it green through turkey season. Turkey season's over, come in and spray it and then plant your grain sorghum, and it's going to have plenty of time to mature. But that's the reason we wanted to bring the grain sorghum on, is just kind of an alternative grain source for an area that's got a lot of browse pressure.
The other thing that I like about it is it's not as demanding as corn is. You don't necessarily have to have a corn planter or a drill. Corn can be finicky. You got to kind of know what you are doing with a lot of input costs. Sorghum might be a great alternative for those guys that are doing fall blends and soybeans that can do in a rotation, but not be as intensive. You don't have to be quite the farmer for sorghum as you do corn.
Right. Yeah, much easier to grow. Doesn't have the fertility requirements, although it'll respond well to nitrogen like corn does, but it'll do well in poorer and drier soils.
The other thing I like is, with guys looking for diversity in their food plot, especially the guys that are trying to add a little bit of structure. Say you got a long bend or narrow food plot and you want different heights. I think adding that is a good height variation from your beans to corn or beans to sorghum. You can definitely do a lot of, if you're into that kind of creativity in your food plots with your diversity plans, I think it's a great option for you.
Right.
Some of the best crops that we had were one of our pro staffers up in Minnesota this year. If you go back and search through real world social media, a lot of the pictures that I posted of the pilot program where we were getting tissue analysis were either on my farm in Kentucky, your place, or from Minnesota. So we had a big variety of different locations that this product was used. So we're excited about it. We're actually going to discontinue the Upland Game Blend product. So there is a little bit of that. We have some seed left on there, so that's why it's still on the website. But we got some things cooking there. But just to make people aware that we think that this is more the better future for food plotters for the wildlife side is this sorghum blend than what we were doing with the Upland Game Blend.
Yeah, the Upland Game Blend, with the variety of plants that was in that mix, there was just no herbicide that you could spray on it to control the weeds. Whatever herbicide you used, it was going to affect some of those plants in that mix. So just having a straight sorghum mix with 3 different grain sorghums is definitely a better option in our opinion. So that's kind of the direction we're going with that.
All right. So the next new product that, believe it or not, we've actually private labeled and made this blend for other companies for a long time. That's why it did not go to a pilot program, but is a new product called Hidden Access. And why don't you introduce and talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, Hidden Access is an annual screen product. I have fought the urge to have an annual screen product for years. Swore we was never going to do it, just because the annual screens that I'd seen were very, they were great whenever they were standing in green, but as they dried down, they would fall over. And Dwayne Hopkins came up with a mix that's done very well, so well, in fact, that multiple other real world dealers was buying this stuff on the side in a plain brown bag and selling to their customers. And finally we took the hint, and the reason for it was I to this day, I'll swear to the end of time that giant miscanthus is the best screen you're going to ever have. It even beats trees. You just cannot see through the stuff. It's got stalks like bamboo, but it takes 3 years to establish. So the annual screen could be planted right next to your first year miscanthus until that miscanthus gets established, and then you just do away with where that annual screen was. And then the other thing is, you got a guy with a leased property where he doesn't want to put the money and time into planting that miscanthus. The annual screen might be a better fit for him. But the whole reason that we've offered it is because of demand, people asking for it. It wasn't because I was pushing it. But Dwayne has done the research, and I don't know. I bet he's been mixing this mix and selling it for, I bet, 10 years now.
Yep.
Over 5 for sure.
It went through its pilot program a long time ago. We just never sold it as a true packaged real world product. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that the guys who can afford and put in miscanthus, it's the best solution there. But there's just different scenarios or budgets that might require a short-term screen. And that's exactly what this is for. So if it's not on the website by the day that this podcast releases, it will be up shortly after. It's probably going to show out of stock. We'll probably turn on sales of this product, I believe, in early January. So obviously our dealers will get a chance to start talking about it and making sure that they inform their customers that it's coming. Our new land management guide, I believe, did it arrive? I think it was supposed to arrive.
Yeah. So our dealers should be getting their new dealer packets. I think they were mailed out probably today. And
right.
So they should be getting those real quick.
So obviously, we don't want to compete with our dealers, but if you want to start learning more about this product, go out to the Real World website. I think this annual screen is just going to have a lot of possibilities for people that miscanthus doesn't make sense. But I still think our flagship product for screen is always going to be that. But you just mentioned something that I didn't even think about. It's that first 2 years while you're waiting for your miscanthus, running another strip of this just on the inside is a great, because we've had to use corn and different things, and in a drought year your corn might only be 5.5-6 feet tall. So, this would be a great tool for people to use while they're waiting for their miscanthus to mature.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Also throw out that we compiled a mailing list of all real world customers over the last 5 years, and we're going to be mailing direct our new land management guide. And the other thing is, if you order from Real World, they will throw in a free land management guide in the box. You don't have to buy the land management guide. Now, if you don't get one in the mail and you don't order, you can order one for just to cover the shipping and handling for $3 or $4. But if you place an order, you're going to get one for free in your box. And if you've ordered in the past 5 years, you should get one in the mail here. It's going to be in January. Early January is when those will mail out.
So, we try to offer a yearly land management guide. This year's got a little bit different feel to it. You and I have made some very strategic decisions about the businesses and, the branding associated with it. But there's one thing, and I hope you took your blood pressure medicine, because this might get you wound up. One thing we're not going to deviate from is using an opportunity to share Jesus in everything that we do. And we actually took a lot of heat this year about having the last page of our land management guide having a devotional in it, and people criticizing us for manipulating our faith to try to drive business. And I want to tell people firsthand, we'll take that heat every single day, because for the amount of people that get upset about us having a devotional at the end of our marketing material, I don't care. It's an opportunity that we might be able to witness to one person, and I'm gonna step up, and the people that got froggy with us about it, I'm gonna just tell them to bring it on. It's just gonna encourage me to do it even more.
Well, it's kind of like my consulting. I was only going to do about 20 properties this winter, but listening to the critics, it fuels me, and it wants me to do so much more and do so much better. I want to take things to the next level when that happens, especially when people, just blatantly lie about us. And that's what I did. And as far as the devotional at the end of, or on the last page of last year's land management guide, I'll give you guys a heads up. There's one on this year's too.
I think as long as you or I have the direction of what we're doing with the company and along with the other business owners and the marketing and the branding, that's something that's going to remain constant for us. Is if you don't like it, don't read that page. It's as simple as that. It's there's no ulterior motive other than we want to do everything we can to share the good news. And if that's through deer hunting, if that's through a podcast, if that's through a trade show, or if that's through a magazine that we end up making once a year, I'll sleep at night knowing that we got some people that don't like it.
Well, I'm a big believer that if you do things right, your business is going to be blessed. And I always use the example of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A never open on Sundays, but I promise you, you can put Chick-fil-A on the same street with every other fast food restaurant known to man, and they will make more money and have better service and better food and do it in 6 days what the other places can't do in 7. And we're going to take we have taken that same approach. We're going to continue that same approach. We are going to appreciate our customers like they've never been appreciated anywhere else. We are going to have the best customer service. We're going to have the best products, and we're going to back them up with Christian values whenever we deal with, not just dealing with the customer, but the vendors, the people that are selling us products. We're going to treat them as we should as Christians.
But anyway, the big news for Real World, two new products coming out this year. Miscanthus is open. Now, let me say that when you get on Real World's website, this is really important for those watching or listening. There's going to be some products like switchgrass, which is currently being cleaned and conditioned. It hasn't been bagged yet. That's going to still show back order. It's not available yet. The soybeans aren't done yet. So if something says back order, it doesn't mean that we're already out. It just means we haven't turned it on for 2025 season yet. But let me state something. If you are a farmer or trying to buy something underneath of 2024 taxes and need to get that, reach out to us via the website or give us a call. We'll figure something out. We do realize that even though we have it turned off on our website, some people may need to place orders for farm or farm exempt prior to the end of the calendar year. So if you need that, we'll obviously help you as best we can. Make sure you're looking at, we're getting signed up many new dealers. Make sure you're keeping an eye on that dealer locator on the website. And we want to encourage you to be a blessing to those local dealers who have been a blessing to us. We want to grow their businesses as much as ours.
Ever had a terrible real estate experience? Average realtors usually spend more time selling themselves than on selling your land. They'll tell you anything to get the listing. They know that if they get the listing, you're stuck with them. Not here. Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That means if we don't meet your expectations, you can fire us. That puts all the pressure on us to perform. We don't just list land, we sell it. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us. Visit us at MidwestLandGroup.com.
So the first one comes from Jeff Gibson from Decatur, Illinois.
Good old Jeff.
Yeah, good friend of ours. He says, Don and Terry, I hope you all are well. Don, I hope your health issue is resolved soon. Would Real World be willing to help with a study that I would like to see implemented? Said study would be to allow contributors to purchase Real World mineral, possibly at cost, to case study CWD and the effects that long-term use of the best mineral supplement on the market may benefit the deer. Maybe a few townships in a CWD zone in Missouri for 5 years. I just can't wrap my head around eliminating deer being the only solution. As you know, I am a Real World dealer and would be willing to contribute my time, efforts, and funds to help implement this project. Obviously, the MDC, I think that's Missouri Department of Conservation, would have to be on board. But you never get anything in life unless you ask. Our deer herd deserves alternatives to just being slaughtered. Well, Jeff, I agree with you 100% that we need a different alternative besides sharpshooters wiping out every living deer in a CWD area. I have serious doubts that you're going to get anywhere. I fully encourage you to take your idea and run with it. And if you can get a state on board, Real World will definitely work with you. I just don't see that happening. And I guess my question for you, Jeff, is why go to Missouri? Why not start in your home state of Illinois and see what you can get done? And I think I know the answer. And I think we both know the liberal nonsense we got in our state for a state government is never going to do anything that makes sense. So hopefully you have better luck in Missouri. I know Jeff owns a farm in Missouri, but yeah, if there's any sort of research project like that, we would absolutely be willing to work with them. And in fact, that's something else that we do a little bit different than some other companies is, if you recall, whenever we discovered the research on humic acid and the effects it could have on CWD, there was a study put out by a group in Michigan that was extremely interesting. And in fact, we've got that video, I think, on our Real World site on the
humic acid page.
On the humic acid page on our website. If you're interested, go there. There is a fantastic video on how humic acid can help with CWD. But the thing we did is we didn't try to hide that as some secret ingredient in Real World products. We shared it with the industry. We absolutely want to be good stewards of the resource. And if we can help our wild deer herds, we absolutely want to be part of that. So if you or any other listener has ideas like that, and you can get a state game agency to work with you, let us know. We'll make something work.
Yep. And I think we've done so much research behind the scenes at different places over the years that the hard part is getting enough people on board to do the sample study. You know, when you look at guys like Dr. Bronson Strickland, when he comes and does speaking engagements with us, and he talks about what just the university, the deer lab down there has to do to get a sample size that science will actually acknowledge. That's the toughest part. It's not a matter of 5 buddies that live in the same county running mineral to see what happens. To get enough data points to have statistical analysis is the tough part, and then having somebody be able to monitor the, what do they call it? There's the constant and the variable in every experiment, I guess. So you have to have both sides of that to prove a hypothesis. I'm going way back to my college days there, so I probably got that wrong. But putting all of that together with some type of agency is going to be the toughest part. But we'll talk to anybody who wants to put something together on a true point that's going to help the overall herd. That's the goal in everything we do.
Well, I think there's merit to the idea that the way to deal with CWD is either through genetics or nutrition. It's not going out with sharpshooters and wiping out every stinking deer because you found one that had CWD in the wild. I think that there's probably, in my opinion, and there's, I don't just pull this out of the air. I mean, I've read information to back up my opinion. I think it's either genetic or nutrition is going to be the answer to combating CWD. And it's going to take game agencies like Oklahoma, who is allowing the release of deer with a certain gene that's resistant to CWD to be released into the wild. It's going to take thinking outside the box like that to ever get a handle on this disease. I think the disease is, for one thing, I think it's been way overstated. I don't think it's near the threat that it's been made out to be. Right. But I also think that the approach that's been taken is political. There's just no other way to put it. It's political. And we got to get that out of the way. And hopefully with Trump's administration, he can drain the swamp. All this nonsense of government funds going back to the states to fight CWD, having a CWD program, and they get federal funding for it. That nonsense needs to stop. Let the universities or somebody handle this. And for God's sake, quit sending the sharpshooters out to wipe out entire deer herds because you found one deer with CWD. And here's the crazy thing. These same people will tell us that the CWD prion lives in the soil for thousands of years, but they bring in sharpshooters and wipe out the deer for 5 years, and then they move on. Well, what did we do? We haven't done anything. If that prion is there, it's still there. They're even admitting it. It's just a matter of, it's just politics at its worst.
Yep. All right, let's get to the second question.
This one comes from Jay Brandenberger from Grable, Indiana. It says, hey, Don, as we set up our farms with areas of low deer likelihood to help us with egress and ingress to blinds and stands, have you ever had a buck pick up on your entrance route and bed in an out of the ordinary place so he could watch if you come down your normal route? And on the apple tree plantings, how many years do you leave the fence around the trees, and do you prune your wild trees at all? Jay, as far as a buck watching your entrance and exit from a stand or a blind, if a buck is catching on to you like that and he's smart enough to sit and watch your entrance and exit route, then you're hunting that stand way too much. Way too much. You should not be hunting it where a deer could possibly do that. So I've never had that situation. I can't imagine such a situation happening on any of the properties that I'm hunting, at least to my stands, because I just don't hunt any one stand that many times in a season for any animal to pick up on it like that. They are sharp. They can catch on to certain patterns. Like I've shared in the past, I had a permission property that I hunted for a number of years, And the deer learned that if my truck was parked out on the road, they knew I was in the woods somewhere I shouldn't be. And it got to the point where I had to hide my truck where the deer couldn't see it when they stepped out of the woods to the field. They could not see my truck, because if they did, they'd start stomping and blowing looking at my truck. They knew I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. So deer can absolutely get on to you. The apple tree question, do I prune them and how long do I leave the cages on? I'll prune those apple trees when they're young to get a good branch structure going. But, once those trees get some size on them, I'm no longer going out there and pruning them for the most part. Now, if I have a branch, the wind breaks a branch or something, yeah, I'll prune it off. But to go out and do regular pruning on those trees, no. I do it at the very beginning to get a good branch structure started on a tree, and that's it. How long do you leave the cages on? I'm going to guess probably on average, what I've done is probably 10 years. Or let that tree get some size on it to make sure that the deer aren't going to come and destroy it either by rubbing it or browsing all the lower branches. But I'd say on average, it's been 10 years for me on the apple trees that I planted.
What about what trees need to have something around the bottom of it so rabbits and varmints don't girdle them?
That's any fruit tree, pears, apples. Persimmons are not quite as bad, but basically pears and apples. If what'll happen in the wintertime, the rabbits and mice and whatever like that bark off those fruit trees, and they will totally girdle that tree and kill it. So you want to put some kind of a bark protector, whether it be a plastic tube or screen wire or something like that. And if you put a plastic tube, you don't want a tube that's significantly bigger than the tree trunk, or there's space for mice and voles to get in there and still girdle that tree. I made that mistake before. It needs to be one of those plastic wraps that fits tight to the trunk and will expand as that trunk grows. And that'll keep them from eating the bark and girdling those trees.
Jay Gingrich was telling me about using screen to put around it, and I thought that was a fabulous idea. I have not used that technique yet, but the trees that I have on order right now, I'm going to be doing that with it.
Yeah, you can just use a 24-inch screen wire like you would use on a screen door and cut off a piece, wrap it around the trunk, and then just use a stapler and staple that together, so it's stays in one piece around that trunk, and that works very well as also.
All right, good question. Hope you enjoy your free T-shirt.
Next question comes from Marvin Beachy from Dundee, Ohio. It says, "Hey Don and Terry, I love the podcast. My question is about soft and hard edges on my food plots. How important are soft edges, and can you explain what is the best way to go about making them, and how deer, especially mature bucks, use them? Any input would be appreciated. Thanks, and God bless. P.S. Hope your health issues clear up and all is well again." Well, appreciate that, Marvin. Obviously you've spent some time probably on YouTube watching some videos. I think the whole idea of a soft edge I don't think it's a bad idea whatsoever, but I think it's one that is not near as important as some videos will make it out to be. The best way to create a softer edge is, so a hard edge would be like you got a mature woods that butts right up to a field. A softer edge would be where that mature woods kind of transitions into that field. So around the edge, there's smaller, shorter trees, grasses, weeds, whatever. The best way to create that, in my opinion, it works fantastic, is to go around the edge of the woods, and any trees that don't have value or never will have value for timber or wildlife, just cut those trees down, but drop them out into the field edge. And, if the tree's 40 foot tall, then you got a 40-foot buffer around the edge of your field, and go along the entire field edge and drop all those bad trees out there. And then the sunlight will, you'll no longer be working that ground where those trees fall. It'll grow up with weeds and briars and saplings and whatever, and it'll create that soft edge or that transition zone from the woods to the field. I've also done that on native grass plantings and switchgrass plantings where you got switchgrass that's, 7-8 foot tall, and then it butts right up to a food plot. Well, there's been situations on my farm where I've taken and I've created a strip of shorter grasses between the food plot and the tall switchgrass. So, maybe 20, 30 feet wide or so, I've got these grasses that are about waist high instead of 7-8 feet high. And when the deer step out of that taller switchgrass, they're not stepping out into a wide open food plot. They're stepping out into into grasses that are about up to their back, where their heads are sticking above those grasses. And yeah, they will feel a little more comfortable doing that a lot of the times. But I think if you don't have the space for it, I wouldn't get too concerned about it. I mean, it's a good practice, but it's not one that's typically going to make a huge difference in the success that you have on a property.
You think the bigger priority is not putting intrusion and pressure on your property to where they're worried about it? I mean,
absolutely.
we overcomplicate things so much by trying to do all of this stuff that at the end of the day, if we're not there when we're not supposed to be and we don't put intrusion, does it really matter? Are deer just going to be there?
Freedom of human intrusion is more important than just about any habitat project we can possibly do. I mean, all of us know of places, whether they be state parks or whatever, where absolutely zero habitat work has been done, but yet it's loaded with deer. And why is it loaded with deer? Because the deer are not pressured there. They're never in danger. So that freedom of human intrusion is way more important than anything we can do on a property.
One of the video clips that we used in that Midwest Sportsman's Classic promo video is what you said in the roundtable last year, that people are using technology or products to try to overcome their inefficiency of the woodsmanship. And I think this might be another example of that, as we get so caught up in, I need this edge here, I need this funnel here. But if we stay out and we have our entrance and exit and our stand location in the spot that, like Wes was talking about, in that you're building a stand site, you're building that area that the deer want to be in the first place, I think we're just overcomplicating a lot of this in the wrong direction.
Yeah, whenever I go on consulting visits, like when I was on this morning, I take my laptop along, and I got a real short PowerPoint presentation, it's about 10 slides or so that I show the client and kind of help them with what to expect and what we're going to do, what we're looking for, what they can expect after the visit, things like that. And I've got one slide at the top. It says, "Don't overcomplicate it." And below the slide, I've got a picture of Albert Einstein and these other scientists on a blackboard with all these formulas. Killing big deer is not that complicated. It's really pretty simple. I think there's a lot of people that overcomplicate it. And I got another slide on that presentation that says, "Forget everything you ever read or seen on the internet." And I have too many clients contact me and say, "Well, what about creating a buck bed? Or would it be good if I would put a water hole here? Could we make it better if I did this or that?" And I tell them all, follow the plan, give the plan as it stands, time to work. And then if you have problems, call me. Don't be trying to change the plan, because most of the time, all these extra projects they want to do, the negative of that extra human intrusion far outweighs the positive of whatever that project might be.
All right. We'll keep going here. I don't want to get too far behind.
The next one comes from Steve Loraus from Minnetrista, Minnesota. It says, "Don and Terry, thanks for the excellent white-tailed deer habitat podcast. I look forward to listening every week's episode. I have a question regarding food plot planting designs, assuming 2 to 5 acre planting a 2 to 5 acre rectangle field. Everyone talks about planting corn, beans, brassicas, winter rye, etc., but nobody talks specifically about the design within the field. Should you plant corn around the perimeter and beans on the interior to screen the field, and vice versa the following year? Do you use corn rows to break up a monoculture field of beans to give the field more structure? This is exactly what we was just talking about. Overthinking, overcomplicating something really simple. It goes right back to the nonsense that's out there on these YouTube videos and such. People overthinking it, overcomplicating it. You got guys that dream up these ideas. They may sound good to the human mind, but when they're actually applied in a real world situation, they hold no merit whatsoever. Most of the time, on most of the properties that I'm on, the situation with the food plots that I see is the darn things are too small. They just have no pulling power, and they offer very, very little food. And if you want to grow big deer, you got to keep them on your property as many daylight hours as possible. And it starts with good, secure bedding cover that's free of human intrusion. And then when they do get up to head to a food source, we want that food source to be on our property 365 days a year. We don't want to be running out of food at Christmas time, and the rest of the winter, those deer are going who knows where trying to find food. We want to keep them on the farm 365 days a year, and that means food on the farm 365 days a year. You know, I don't think I've ever been, I've probably consulted on over 500 to 1,000 properties. Probably like 500 to 700, somewhere in there, properties in my life. And I don't recall one single time where I told the client, you got too much food. You need to cut back on your food plots. Never has happened. It's always, you need more food. Always. I mean, some guys have enough, but I've never seen one where there's too much.
Yeah, we've told people they need more bedding, but not too much food. You know, I'm all for diversity in your food plots and doing different things. I talk about height of products, but spend more time. What I would tell Steve is spend more time focused on where are the deer able to come in and out of your food plot, and then how are you hunting to be in the right spot against that entry and exit. What's your entry and exit, and what's your wind directions? That's where your time needs to be focused, not on what's the checkerboard shape look like. You have to establish where the deer are coming in and out, where you're going to be, and where your in and out is with the different wind directions. That's what's the secret sauce in all of this, not what pattern is going to be inside of a field.
Yeah, that's a great point, Terry, as far as dictating how those deer enter and exit a plot. You'd be way better off spending your efforts limiting how a deer can get into your plot, whether it be by a fence, by stacking up down trees, by lining up big round bales of hay, whatever it takes. Limit how that deer can get into the plot, and then have a big plot. Make sure he's got a reason to come there. And I'll share my analogy about food plots that I've shared many times, comparing a food plot to a restaurant for people. A small food plot is a fast food restaurant. If you are hungry and you drive by McDonald's, you may pull in and eat, but you're not going to drive 10, 15, 20 miles out of your way to eat at McDonald's. And a small food plot is a McDonald's. If there's a deer walking by in close proximity to that small plot, yeah, he may stop and eat, but you've got no pulling power with that little plot. The bigger the plot, the more diversity within that plot, the more pulling power it has. And just the property I was on this morning, we're looking at trying to put 8 to 10 acres of food on this 90-acre property. And because that is the weakest link in the neighborhood, and I know that if this client has that much food, and it doesn't all have to be the same crop, and it doesn't matter how it's laid out, but if he's got in that 8 to 10 acres, if he's got some corn, some soybeans, and some greens, he's going to have deer visiting that plot every single day, as long as the human intrusion is kept to a minimum. And that it's just, I see it day after day. I never tell a guy, oh, you got too much food, you need to cut back on that food. It just doesn't happen. Next one comes from Riley Welch from Beecher, Illinois. It says, Don, I no longer hear you mention your 98 acres. Do you still own it? If so, how did this season go on it? And do you have high hopes for it in the coming years? What's its biggest strength and biggest weakness? Can you talk about what you think its ceiling is? Love listening to you guys every week. Riley, I still do have that 98 acres. Believe it or not, there's only been one guy ever hunt that 98 acres, and you're looking at him, and it's not me. Terry is the only guy that's hunted that 98. There was an older, mature buck there that, I don't know, what would you say, 150 probably, or maybe 160?
Yeah.
That I told Terry if he gets a chance to shoot it, he's welcome to go down there.
There was a stand, if I remember right, it was in October, and there was a stand that we had a weird wind one day, and that was the best place to go. It was before the beans were harvested, and I ended up going over there and sitting one night. But that's the one that Austin did a lot of work on.
Yeah, there's a major TSI cut done on that timber. Got 4 stands on the farm. I could hunt any wind direction on that farm, but there just was not a shooter buck there. As far as the ceiling, I'm still trying to figure out that neighborhood and what's going to be available there. But if I had to guess right now, and when I talk about a ceiling, I'm not talking about the occasional buck. I'm talking year after year. I'm thinking the ceiling for that property is probably about 150 inches. Just based on what I've seen thus far. I think occasionally there's going to be bucks bigger than that. I think 170 is a reality there. It's just not going to happen every year. The biggest weakness.
You also got to let your plan mature a little bit. The farm is very new to having, all of that undergrowth. This was the first real year for it really to explode, and it needs a couple more years, and then what it holds.
And I don't plan on hunting until there's a shooter there, and I may let guests hunt there, but I'm not going to. The biggest weakness I think is probably the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood not near as good as the one where my home farm is, and by neighbor, I mean it's got better cover. That neighborhood's got a lot more cover than my home farm, but that cover comes with a cost, and the cost is a lot more hunting pressure. So the bucks there have to deal with a lot more hunting pressure than they do on my home farm. So that's the big negative. The big positive, I think the farm lays out pretty good. I think the wood lot that's on that farm is pretty isolated. It's going to be hard for a neighbor or anyone else to take advantage of that. I think the cover is really good on that farm, and it's a matter of time before there's going to be a good buck there. I feel confident in that, but I have no idea how long that's going to be, whether it's going to be next year or 10 years from now, but there'll be a big one there one day.
I think that if somebody would have hunted that consistently, that buck would have been shot. I mean, that buck was killable by all means. I think that buck was killable with the way you have it laid out. You might have had to invest some time to be at the right spot at the right time to do it, but I think it could have been done before the rut if somebody would have had the time to do it. It's just we decided to go after the buck I called King David, and that's where the focus went after that. So he was just a change of plans, but it's great. Property lays out great. We'll see what it turns into.
Yep. It's not going anywhere unless somebody offers me a ridiculous price for it. So
that could happen.
If it does, they'll buy it. I'll let them have it. But next question comes from Ellis Ober from Memphis, Missouri. He says, "Hey, Don, do you think most bucks are going to shed their antlers early this year? I heard people say deer are shedding early this year. We have not seen any yet, though. Just wondering your thoughts on this. Thanks, and hope you can stay out of the hospital." Ellis, appreciate that comment, too. It looks like I'm going to be able to stay out now. I don't think that the bucks are going to shed all that early this year. I do know I've had pictures sent to me of multiple bucks that have shed, but those bucks have injuries or something. You guys might have seen the big 8-pointer that I posted on my social media a couple days ago from Wisconsin. That buck, you can't tell it in the picture, but he'd actually shed one of those antlers on the retrieval. I think they pulled the antler right off when they went to drag that buck. And but he was injured. He'd been shot earlier in the year. He lost a bunch of weight with skin and bones, and it was that stress that caused him to shed. And I've had pictures sent to me of other bucks that have shed already. And obviously there's some sort of stress that's caused that. Usually it's an injury this time of year. You know, bucks that we talked earlier, the EHD and how the after effects of EHD, even the deer that survive it, you know, those bucks are going to be in terrible condition going into the winter months. A lot of those are going to shed early, but I think with the healthy bucks, they're going to shed when they typically do, barring some major weather event. I know there was one year, I remember it's probably been 12, 15 years ago now, we had a really, really bad ice storm in January, and that ice it stayed on everything for about a week. It's not like it was there for a day or so and then it melted. The soybeans were the size of basically shovel handles. The soybean stalks were the size of shovel handles with those beans encrusted in that ice. Fences, you know, the ice on the fences just stayed there for a week. And when that happened, by the end of that week, all the bucks were shedding. I was going into my bedding areas and I was picking up shed antlers by the handfuls. And barring some event like that, I don't expect the shedding, the majority of it, to be any earlier than it typically is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was it, last Christmas or last New Year's? It got, -30 wind chill for a couple days. If that sets in one of those storms like that, you never know what could happen. I mean, all of that's dictated by that testosterone dropping based on external factors. So we'll see. Nothing we can do about it either way other than make sure that there's enough food out there for them to survive and stay healthy.
Right.
All right, with that, we're going to come back after Christmas with another episode. But to everybody out there, I hope that you guys have a wonderful Christmas. And I can't encourage you guys enough to enjoy the time with your families and remember why we're celebrating it above all. That's the last week's Sunday night prayer time. I was really happy to hear Harold Monk talk about Christmas was a rescue mission. You know, God tried to give a lot of people the opportunity to do right, and we just kept failing. So Christmas was a rescue mission. He had to send his son here to rescue us and give us the opportunity to be in heaven. So this week's Sunday night prayer time, I haven't watched it yet actually, but Ty Miller, who's one of the guys that helps us out on Chasing Giants TV, recorded it. Make sure you stay tuned after the credits of this, and we'll play that right afterwards. But other than that, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. God bless. Hope you have a great week.
Take care.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Chasing Giants Sunday Night Prayer Time. I'm Ty Miller, and I am blessed to get to share with you the Sunday Night Prayer Time leading into the Christmas week. And I wanted to kind of go about this in a little bit of a different way, but I wanted to start with something that I think a lot of us struggle with, and we overlook when we hear the reading of the story. I'm going to be in Luke 2, and this is when an angel appears before the shepherds and speaks to them. And it is very easy to accept the fact that Christ came for the world and to defeat darkness, defeat the devil, and save us all, to save the whole world. But it is quite another thing to hear the words of this angel. And I want you to picture yourself being one of the shepherds. Because the angel says something very specific that I think each of us need to remember heading into this Christmas time. I'll start at verse 8, and we'll get to the verse that I really want to focus on. And It starts with, "And in the same region there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. And the angel said to them, 'Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger.'" Now the angel could have looked at these shepherds and said, "For unto the world this day is born in the city of David a Savior." But the angel didn't say that. The angel was very specific and said, "For unto you is born this day in the city of David. And this will be a sign for you." Not for the world, but for you. "You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger." That babe that came all those years ago came for you. That's hard for us to sometimes accept. And there's a reason for that. And whenever I read this and I hear the words of the angel being spoken to me and putting myself in those shoes, I can't help but think of one of my favorite Christmas carols or songs. And it's a little bit of an odd one, and it's different, and there are some people that don't even consider it a Christmas song because it is not directly pulled from the scripture. But the heart of what is in it, I think, resonates the entire Christmas story. And for whatever reason, God uses certain things for certain people differently. It has always been a song that when I hear it and I genuinely let myself listen to it all, I can't help but get emotional. It actually was written, it's not a really old Christmas carol really, or Christmas song. It was written in 1941. Now granted, that's quite a while ago, but in the history of songs, it really isn't. But it was written by a lady known as Kay to her friends, but it was Catherine Kennicott or something like that, Catherine K. Davis. And she was from Massachusetts, and she was a music teacher, an instructor at a local school, and she was a composer. She was trying to take a nap one day, and God had put these notes in her head that she could not get out of her head. She just couldn't shake it. It was consuming her thoughts, her mind, and she could not lay her head down and find rest until she went and wrote out the song. She had a section of the song that was inspired by the French Christmas carol Pas de Pain just running through her head. And she went down, she wrote the song, and she ended up sharing it with her students at the school, but it stayed in the close-knit, smaller community there. And then, in the way that God kind of does, 17 or 18 years later, she gets a call. And yes, they had phones back then. She gets a call from a friend, and they wanted to know if she had heard her song that was all over all the radio stations that existed, which probably wasn't many back then, but it was being played like every 10 minutes. This song was being played, and everybody was falling in love with it. And she was kind of caught off guard, and she had no clue what her friend was talking about, and her friend goes, "Well, the little drummer boy." And Kay said, "Well, I don't have a Christmas song called The Little Drummer Boy." And she quick found she went to her radio and she quick found a station, and sure enough, within a few moments or minutes, it started playing. And it was one of the most beautiful versions of her song, or recording of her song, that she ever envisioned, she's been said to say. And she sat there and she listened, and it was her song. And she tracked down the studio and everybody that had composed it and recorded it and released it, and she was eventually credited properly, and it was discovered. And if you look up the story of The Little Drummer Boy, you will find that Kay Davis actually was the composer who wrote it, and it was originally called The Carol of the Bell, or the Drum. I always mess it up. It was called The Carol of the Drum. And if you don't know the story or have not heard the song, there's basically this poor little boy who is called to come see Jesus, to come see the King. Come, they told me, ba-rum-ba-bum-bum. A newborn king to see, ba-rum-ba-bum-bum. And it goes through the story of him visiting Jesus, and this poor boy, this poor drummer boy, he had no clue what he was going to give to this babe, this king, because there was no gift that he had that was fit to give a king. He had nothing. He felt unworthy to even be in his presence. And the boy, I picture him maybe playing with this raggedy old drum that maybe his dad or somebody had scrounged together, maybe even made. And I picture his sticks, his drum sticks, being actual sticks. But it was his most prized possession, and when he was called to come see the king, he happened to have the drum, is how I envision it, and he just went. And so in the moments before this babe, this king, the boy basically is like, shall I play for him? And he begins to play, because it's all he knew to do. All he had was himself and that drum. And I oftentimes, whenever I'm taking communion or sitting there thinking of this babe, this king, this savior, during Christmas time especially, I can so easily put myself in that little boy's shoes, because I don't feel worthy. I don't. But the beauty of the Christmas story is that babe, that Savior, was born for you, for me. There was nothing we have to do. We don't have to get ready. We don't have to get cleaned up. We don't have to get our lives right. We don't have to have all the broken pieces mended. We don't have to have all the reconciliations that need to be done, accomplished. We just need to come before Him, and don't worry about what you bring. Just offer up what you can offer. And I always picture myself with a raggedy old drum, and I'm so grateful for the gift that is before me that I can't help but attempt to try to play. And I don't picture this boy or myself playing the most gorgeous tune. I picture myself messing up. Perhaps the drum doesn't have a great sound. But the beauty in that song is at the end, the babe looks at the drummer boy and smiles. And he smiles at me. He smiles at me. He smiles at you. Christ smiles at each and every one of us because He came for us. Even if you were the only person on this earth, He still would have sent His Son because you were worth it. That's the Christmas story. So I encourage you this Christmas, as you go forth and you spend some time with family and you go and worship our Lord, I encourage you to don't just go through the motions, but be present and listen to his call. Listen to him beckon you. Listen to him tell you to come. And behold the King that he's offered up to you, to each of us. For you will find him. You will absolutely find him. And he is waiting. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as we enter this Christmas time, I ask that you be with each and every brother and sister that is watching and listening to this, wherever you may find us. Perhaps we're new to this whole thing, this whole relationship with you. Or perhaps we've grown old in our faith and we've gone a little lax and we find ourselves going through the motions. Light a fire in us again. Call upon us this Christmas to come and behold the Savior which you sent for each and every one of us. Let us put ourselves in the shoes of that shepherd who heard the words spoken to him for you, for unto you you will find. It's not for the world, but it was for each and every one of us. Personalize it in the lives of those listening. Remove the fear as the angel told the shepherds long ago to fear not. Do not let our struggles, our addictions, our afflictions, our sins, our doubts, our worries keep us separated from you, even in your presence. Don't let us just be present in church, but let us be present with you in those moments. Let us begin to realize that it does not matter where we are. It matters that we come to you. It doesn't matter what we have. All that matters is that we offer it up to you. Lord, let us hear you say, come. And I pray that each and every one of us find it in ourselves to look that babe in the eye and play our drum. As ragged, as torn, and out of tune as it may be, let us play. For that brings you joy, and you shall smile back at us. I ask all this in your heavenly name. Amen. Merry Christmas, everyone, from each and every single one of us at Chasing Giants Sunday Night Prayer Time. If you ever need any help or prayer, you can reach out to any of us, get in touch with us. We'd love to pray for you. And I just pray for each and every one of you this Christmas. God bless.